Hello, welcome to Sketchyville. Today we're working on the outside of the 2020 dollar store room box. Now, I didn't have a clear vision for the outside of the box. Did I want it to look like a book? Did I want it to look like a time capsule? I had no idea. So I just decided to dive in and see where it went and what the box wanted to be. And just a side note, ignore the band-aid on my finger. I told you guys, limb reattachments are expensive. The first thing I did was use my very expensive laser cutter to cut a design out of chipboard for the top of the box. I had to use my very expensive laser cutter because I'm still trying to convince my husband that my very expensive laser cutter was a good investment. At this point, I'd use it to cut pizza if I could. If you don't have a very expensive laser cutter, you can use a Cricut Maker or just an X-Acto knife to cut out chipboard pieces to make a design for your box. I also printed a template onto a piece of paper, which I glued to the top of the box so that I wouldn't have to struggle to line up my chipboard pieces. Then I glued the chipboard onto the template. I'm doing this so that when the box is finished, there's a little bit of dimension on the cover. The glue was making my pieces warp a little bit, so I used my 1, 2, 3 blocks to weigh the pieces down. Now, if you don't have 1, 2, 3 blocks, you can use a heavy book. Just make sure to put a piece of parchment paper or a silicone mat between the book and your project so that you don't accidentally glue them together. Next, I covered the front with crinkled up pieces of tissue paper. I chose a dark colored tissue paper because I was going to be painting the box with dark colors, and you just get better coverage with your acrylic paints if you stay in the same color value. You're probably going to water down your glue a little bit on this next step. It just makes it easier to spread. The idea when you're using this technique is to let the tissue paper wrinkle to make it look sort of leathery. Also, make sure to poke it down into all of the spaces around your chipboard pieces so that those raised areas retain their dimension under the tissue paper when it's dry. I was freaking out a bit because everything was wrinkling as I was doing this and warping from the extra water that I added to the glue. But when it dried, it all went back to being smooth, so it worked out. Just be aware that this might happen to you too. I wasn't sure what to do with the edges of this box because, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted the box to look like. So I decided to just paint them black because it was easy and it would allow me to change my mind later on if I wanted to. I buffed the gloss off the areas I was going to paint with 180 grit sandpaper and then took a Sharpie marker and covered all of the seams and crevices with a black marker just in case I missed any areas when I was painting it. Once I had filled in all of those seams with the marker, the whole box got a coat of black paint. It's really important that you prime these boxes with a matte sealer or by sanding them. If you don't, the paint absolutely will not stick. You'll see this later on a few spots that I missed. They gave me no end of grief. I decided I wanted to make the box look like it was bound in a rich burgundy leather. So I chose a color called wine out of my paint stash that in the bottle it looked like it was going to do the trick. Instead, it made my box look like it had been bound in human skin. Appropriate for 2020? Possibly. Disconcerting? Absolutely. Not what I was going for though. I subscribe to the Bob Ross School of Crafting, which is basically throw paint at that sucker until you like it. So, The next thing I did was make a color wash by combining brown and black paint with water. I then drowned the box in it, dabbed some off, and let it dry. Next, I made a color wash out of black paint and water, and used that to go around all of the raised details on the lid, as well as any parts of the box I wanted to look dirty, like they'd been handled. With that step, I finally had something that no longer looked like human flesh, so it was time to start highlighting. I dry brushed white paint around the edges of the box and over some of the raised, wrinkled areas. Then I made sure to hit all of the raised details on the lid. Now, if you've never dry brushed before, what you want to do is load your brush up with paint and then wipe it all off on a paint rag. Do you think you wiped it enough? Then you should probably wipe it some more. It's always best to have too little paint on the brush than it is to have too much. Once you have your brush prepared, gently brush over the areas that you want to highlight. Do you remember the piece of paper I used as a template to place all of the chipboard pieces on the lid? It turns out it was really important to make sure that that piece of paper was the exact same size as the lid of the box. I didn't do this, and the line of the paper shows through the tissue on the lid. So to hide my shame, I decided to do a little bit of fancy inlay work. I took some wooden stir sticks and painted them with a metallic rose gold. I thought the rose would complement the still slightly pinkish cover. Once the stir sticks had dried, I cut them at a 45-degree angle into 1-inch pieces. I then glued them all around the edge to camouflage that paper seam. I used a straight edge to keep my lines as straight as possible, wiggling the pieces into place before the glue took hold. I mitered the corners, which is actually pretty easy to do with the Easy Cutter, and that gave the inlay a professionally finished look. The metallic inlay looked a little too bright and clean to match the rest of the box, so I color washed it with brown to dull it down a bit, and then black to grunge it and age it. To finish off the box and tie everything together, I dry brushed the whole cover with the rose gold metallic paint. This gave the box a nice, rich shimmer and made all of the elements look cohesive. That's it for the outside of the 2020 room box. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out. If you didn't like this video, that's okay. We don't like you either. Next time, we'll be making all of the bits and bobs that made 2020 so surreal to go inside of our box. If you don't want to miss the next video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell button to receive notifications when we upload a new video. As always, affiliate links to all of the tools and supplies I used in this video are available below, just in case you see a new tool or supply that you need to add to your stash. Thanks for visiting Sketchyville. We'll see you again real soon.